Now then, the slogan for the Conservative Party conference, printed on its brochure, you'll hear it all week, is getting Britain moving. Well, it certainly has been a difficult week for the party, with reports that some senior MPs are choosing to stay away, in fact, this weekend to express their dismay at the Chancellor's mini-budget. But someone who is there is the Conservative MP and former Vice-Chair of the party, Andrew Bowie. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Martin.
How do you feel about what's going on? Tumultuous time, this. Where are you in all of it? It's impossible to say where the Conservative Party is, isn't it, Mr Bowie? Because every different member at the moment seems to have a different opinion. Where are you?
Well, I'm in Birmingham and very much looking forward to what's going to be a really exciting and interesting conference. You know, we've got the highest number of delegates, I think, at Conservative Party conference since the early 1990s. A lot of very interesting things to discuss, and I'm looking forward to getting involved, talking to party members, thanking those activists that go out, knock doors, put their hands in their pocket, take to social media and support us, and really are the reason that we are elected to Parliament at all. So that's why I'm in conference. And that's why
do you think a lot of them will be saying to you, crikey, my job on the doorstep would be so much easier if the government hadn't just tanked the economy?
Look, I mean, I've been elected since 2017, and in that period we've had Brexit, we've had leadership change, we've had a snap general election, and now, of course, we're going through the period that we're going through just now. We believe in the overall good that the Conservative Party does for our country. We believe that the Conservatives are much better in government than out. We believe that we have a better plan for this country than any of the alternatives, and that's why we're here. That's why we're members of the Conservative Party, and that's why we're gathered here in Birmingham right now.
Mr Bowie, I've got to ask you, does that plan involve, you know, hiking mortgage rates to the extent that they become affordable, making people homeless, putting people out of jobs, tanking the pound, making the Bank of England step in to save our pensions? Is that what's in the plan? Or has the plan just gone off the rails?
Look, the Chancellor will be making his speech later on this week, and will be outlining more of his plans for this country and for our economy. And then, of course, we'll be hearing more from the OBR. And then next week in Parliament, I'm sure the Prime Minister and the Chancellor will be expanding more on their plans to get Britain moving, as you said already, to move this country forward. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And that's one of the reasons why it's really important that we have conference, that we're gathered here in Birmingham, so we can question, so we can ask the Chancellor what his intention for our country is, to expand on those plans as laid out before Parliament just 2 weeks ago, and that's why it's very important that we're all here today.
The markets have looked at the Chancellor's plans, or the limited access they've had to them, because he hasn't shown the workings at all yet, has he? Which seems to be at the crux of a lot of this. And the markets have basically said, we don't think you know what you're doing. And that's a massive problem for you, isn't it? Because it doesn't really matter what you say, it matters what the markets say.
Yeah, of course that matters a lot, and I think the Prime Minister this morning already said that she thinks that they maybe should have laid the groundwork a little bit better ahead of last week's fiscal event, but we are where we are. I believe that the FTSE rose at the end of last week. The pound is back to where it was at the end of last week, and I think that as we move forward and as the Chancellor and the Prime Minister expand on their plans, explain to, among others, Conservative MPs exactly what their intention is for this country, for the economy, then the markets will respond accordingly.
But the markets have only corrected themselves because the Bank of England have come in with a fire hose of money to stop our pensions going down the pan.
Look, as I said, the Chancellor will be expanding more on his plans, as he set out last week. This week in Birmingham, the Prime Minister will be doing the same, and I look forward to hearing them, questioning, asking what exactly their intention is for this country, what exactly their intention is for our government as we move forward, and that's exactly why we are here in Birmingham, so we can have those conversations, ask those questions, and so we can expand and explain to the country what exactly we're trying to do.
Are you going to vote for all this in Parliament? Are you going to vote for the 45p tax cut?
As I said, we're going to hear more. We're going to hear more from the Chancellor exactly what his plans are for the economy this week, and we're going to take a decision based on what those plans are, and every Conservative MP will have to examine those plans in detail and in depth and come to a decision as to whether or not they support it.
Why are we even having this conversation, Mr Bowie? Why did Kwasi Kwarteng stand up in Parliament and outline all sorts of extraordinary measures, what effectively feels like a massive economic libertarian experiment that's being conducted across the whole country, without detailing the plans, even to his own party, never mind to the markets? Why did he come out with the extraordinary part of this without the machinery behind it to show his workings?
I'm afraid that's a question for the Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's not something that I can answer.
He should lose his job over this, shouldn't he?
Like you, listening. I think that's a bit extreme. Look, the Chancellor will be setting out his plans in more detail this week. And then, of course, in the weeks ahead, we will then examine those plans in detail and determine whether or not we support them. That's what all Conservative MPs will have to do as we move forward. And that's what ultimately the public expects of us.
If you don't support them, and there's already talk of a big rump on the back benches kind of standing up against this, joining with Labour, voting some of this down, I mean, the Chancellor presumably is toast. And in the first kind of 3 weeks of government, if her budget doesn't get through, the Prime Minister's probably toast, or should be toast under any normal circumstance, shouldn't she?
Look, I mean, we're not at that stage. I don't want to engage in hypotheticals. We are going to examine those plans. The Chancellor has made clear he's going to be setting out more detail of what he wants to achieve. The Prime Minister will be doing the same this week and in the weeks ahead. And then every Conservative MP will have to examine those plans and determine whether or not they support them or not. That's exactly what the public expects of us, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, unfortunately, the whole mini-budget seemed to be hypothetical. Look, Michael Gove, I don't know if you saw, was on with Laura Kuenssberg this morning. He was saying the government's right to recognise its mistakes, but they don't realise the scale of change that's needed. I'm profoundly concerned, he said, 35% of the money we're borrowing was nothing to do with the energy crisis. It was to deliver tax cuts. The sheer risk of using borrowed money to deliver unfunded cuts is fundamentally not conservative. Is he right?
Yes, he's right.
That's a pretty damning indictment of where we are then. You started this interview by backing up and saying, listen, give them a chance, they're probably on the money. And now you're saying you share his profound concerns about where we are at the moment.
I share Michael Gove's concerns about where we are right now, but I think it's incumbent on all of us to give the Chancellor the space and the time to expand on those plans, to set out more detail, and then for us to be able to determine whether or not we support those plans or not. That's one of the reasons that I'm in Birmingham at Conservative Party conference right now.
Do you have faith in him to dig us out of this from what you've seen?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I know Kwasi. I've known Kwasi for a long time. I don't doubt that they have regrets over the manner in which they presented the fiscal event last week. I don't doubt that a lot of effort will be going into talking to Conservative MPs like me who have serious concerns about some of the decisions that they've taken. But I absolutely have faith that they'll be able to talk to us, to discuss with us, to lay out more detail into what they want to achieve with our economy and with our country moving forward. And that's exactly why we're here in Birmingham right now, to have those conversations.
You're saying the sheer risk of borrowing money to deliver unfunded tax cuts is not conservative. You can't then vote for that, can you, in Parliament?
Look, we aren't at the vote yet. We have to have those conversations. We have to examine exactly what it is the Chancellor and the Prime Minister want to do. And that's what we're going to be hearing about here in Birmingham and back in Westminster in the weeks ahead. That's exactly what every member of the public, I'm sure, wants every MP to do. They want them to do their jobs, to examine the plans, to see exactly what those plans are, and then to take a decision moving forward.
What's this done to your party? I saw one poll, I think, that when translated into seats suggested that if there was an election tomorrow, you might have 3 seats.
Yeah, I tend not to believe polls. If I believe polls, Martin, I wouldn't be standing in front of you right now. We're about 18 months at the earliest from the next general election. We'll see where we come when the public do go to the polls and determine who they want to be their next government. That time is a long way off.
Your party's in a lot of trouble at the moment, though. Would you accept that? Are you in trouble? Do you think your seat is safe?
Martin, I don't take for granted any vote that I've ever one I scraped through in 2019 in a very difficult election, and I look forward to taking the case for conservatism to the people of West Aberdeen and Kincardine whenever the time arises, whenever that general election is.
Let me ask you this. There's a suggestion this morning that's not been denied that benefits will be cut, the welfare will be cut to fund these tax cuts for the rich, kind of Robin Hood in reverse, taking from the poor to give to the richest in the country. What would you make of that as a policy?
Well, as you said, there's been a suggestion. None of these are actual policies. I've not seen any government minister come out and actually put these policies in front of us until that stage.
Yeah, I have. Simon Clarke, the Levelling Up Secretary.
On whether or not that would or wouldn't be a good idea.
Well, how about Simon Clarke, the Levelling Up Secretary?
No, that's not what Simon Clarke said.
He said there's a very large welfare state,
he did not say.
And departments in Whitehall will have to trim the fat. Quoted Treasury sources quoted in the same piece in the Times yesterday said they saw welfare as a budget we can probably save from.
Yes, Treasury sources quoted in the newspapers is not government policy.
All right. Would you back it as a policy?
A large welfare state, and there are areas of government where I'm sure we could trim. He did not at any point say that we were going to be trimming the welfare budget. So until any of those plans are actually put in front of me, I'm not going to get drawn on hypotheticals as to whether that's the Conservative plan or not.
So you won't say, if I ask you straight whether you think cutting welfare is a decent way to fund tax cuts for the rich, you won't say whether you think that's a good idea or not? In principle.
Of course it's not a good idea, but that's not the question that's in front of us. In principle, cutting welfare to pay for tax cuts would not be the right thing to do, but that's not what's been laid in front of us. It's a suggestion in a newspaper taken from government sources. I'm not going to stand here and make a decision on whether or not I support something which isn't actually put in front of us as a government policy or not.
Well, listen, the good news for you, Andrew Bowie, is I'm going to be on a plane in about 2 hours heading down to Birmingham, so we may be able to have this conversation again over the days ahead. I'm sure I will catch up with you at some point. Thanks for being with us this Sunday morning in the meantime. Yes. Right, that is it from us for now on this part of the Sunday show. If you're watching us on the television, this is where you leave us. I'll be back this time next week on BBC One.
From unintentional